Hello there, this is the A&Y Pony and welcome to the 18th episode of Crepuscularity Discussed. Today's topic is world building. And with me, as usual, Byter, welcome to the show.
Clark.
And our, self-proclaimed expert on world building, PastAnalysis. Hello Past, how are you doing?
Hello. Hello.
And our history teacher from Sweden, Emil Rutkowski. Hello Emil, how are you?
Hello, yes, fine.
Okay, and since world building is not really my expertise, I guess it's up to you guys to give us some talk-worthy content. So, who wants to go first?
I guess I will. One thing that I do want to say is that world building, I think it's one thing that really helps. It's something that really bronies who are really into the show, who have already become bronies, I think that world building is really the treat for them. I don't think that you can get into the show with world building. I know I didn't, so. Yeah.
I always, I could go on my own tangent here, where I relate world building with MLP. A lot of people, the two guests we have today, are very much focused on world building, and there's an actual question of why that is. You know, if it was something like the new Looney Tunes, what? No one's really going to be bothered trying to make a consistent universe. So why is it shows like MLP have people who are interested in the world that people inhabit? And for the most part, I would say it's because the show is very immersive. That not only is the world fairly consistent, and one thing at least, like there is consistency, like in the worlds of Adventure Time, but it sort of jumps from random area to random area all over the place. So that's not really the focus. But with MLP, it's a bit more serious. It's more focused on the characters, and there's a lot of mythos that is suggested in the show.
Yeah.
With all the hints to the Greek mythology, or like
the mythology is often a lot of things that people seem to jump to. So the most classic one is just the timeline of the events, or Celestia and Luna, where they always sort of consider how they got into power and what places they hold within the show, because the show is able to make its audience invested enough that questions of what Celestia actually does helps their immersion into the show's universe. Yeah.
Also, I think that like the episode Heartwarming Eve, I'm going to gloat about this episode, I think that episode was good in raising more questions for people, bronies, to try to answer, and it kind of helped expand the world building, brony like activity, looking into the world building.
This is the thing though with MLP though, in the terms of world building, I would argue that other than Heartwarming Eve is pretty much the only case where we actually have much actual world building. All the other times, the consistency of the world and how it is there and how it operates takes a bit of a back seat. Sometimes it's done more better than others, but it's not like something like something like Digimon or Star Trek, or something where the point of the show is the world building, where they spend ages building up this huge meticulous thing.
Yeah.
The biggest example, like in literature, would be like Lord of the Rings, where he would spend pages upon pages upon pages talking about every place that the characters are going to.
Yeah.
In MLP, though, it doesn't spend ages doing that. Artswarming either is actually pretty much the exception. But it is also the interesting exception, I think.
Yeah, that's a problem actually I have with Tolkien, that he spends too much time on it, because I've read through the books once, and I'm probably never going to do it again, because going through that first book is such a chore, because I'm not interested in where the tobacco, the hobbits smoke came from, how they grew it, because it's the characters that should be the main focus, and that's how MLP is, why the theme of MLP is so interesting, because they focus so much on characters and make them so developed that the world becomes more interesting, because the characters also develop. We know what we can expect from them, but also we want to know, why does everyone act like they do? What's the reason? It's the same like very few cartoon shows does that. I can actually only think of one, except before mentioned Adventure Time, that really develops it well because of great characters, and that would be actually Tailspin from the early 90s, with Baloo the Pilot and all those guys, because characters there are so good, so the other nations in the world are actually very interesting because of that. They grow the other nations and become more important by time, and it's a very interesting world actually that show takes place in. And that's they didn't focus much on the world in the beginning there. It was a backdrop thingy, but it became bigger because the characters got more developed. We know what we could expect from them, and just using only the characters all the time would get a bit stale. So they grow the world, just like in MLP. While Tolkien did the other way, and that's why I don't read his books anymore.
Yeah, I mean, one thing Lord of the Rings failed to do for me was it failed to get me interested in the world, and that's because world building, I don't think, is something that people get interested in by just reading about the world. It's usually about the characters. You get interested in something else, and then that encourages you to invest more time into the world.
Often good examples from the show is actually introducing new aspects to the world, or using mythos from the past to set up stuff the characters are going to go through. So the show very much literally starts with them, with the whole story of the two sisters and the elements of harmony. Very much parts of the world that was the setup for their journey to reach the castle and try and use the elements.
Yeah, and once people start to get interested in the characters, then they want to ask more about, wait, what about the sisters? How did they gain power? All those questions start to come up.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, of course, is that the MLP, in terms of world building, didn't actually do much with its world. For the Nightmare and Moon art, for example, though, that was restricted due to time and the EI rating from what Faust wanted to do, so she couldn't put too much depth into Nightmare Moon, or so she said. So what we got was a basic motivation to start with why she's the bad guy, and then she's defeated, and that's about it. But it hasn't stopped people having enjoyed the characters, been interested in the world that was presented to us, to build a mythos or think about how that could have worked in the past.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking of other things, so like the introduction of new characters like Discord, Chrysalis, those kind of things. Those are, or even I like the Diamond Dogs or the Fruit Bats or the Dragons.
Yeah, introducing a new species.
Introducing new species that are interesting to the viewers, even if the species being there isn't the point of the episode.
Yeah.
We find out more about the Diamond Dogs or Dragons because it's a Spike episode, or at least those ones are Spike's doing some stuff.
Yeah.
Ironically, though, the one episode that felt like it should have been about world building in the show wasn't.
I know where.
And that was one. Yeah, the Crystal Empire.
Yeah. Yep.
Because that was sort of the big, huge thing that was missing from it in terms of world building. And I think while lots of people who are invested in the show did come up with lots of headcanon, there wasn't much material to work with because there was so little character put into that world.
Yeah.
It was like a big, huge, fanciful place with its own special race of creatures, and no characters in it, and no backstory. Despite that huge, epic library they show us, we don't actually sit down and actually read the books or just go through the different sections and find out what they were interested in cataloging.
Yeah.
It'd be like dropping another, for example, elven city in the middle of the Shire in Lord of the Rings, and just they go there, save the place, go back, and only thing that's really there is eye candy, nothing else.
You're only interested in it if you have an interest beforehand. Otherwise, the world itself isn't going to be very appealing to you.
Yeah. Which was the big failing of the Crystal Empire. And if we're going to, I think the thing is often like, if you're introducing the Diamond Dogs, it's very obvious these are sentient dogs, they act like dogs, and they seem to be obsessed with gems. Their aesthetics are very much infer, obviously, who they are. And all the rest we can sort of guess from that basic groundwork. The thing is with the Crystal Empire, I think, was that whilst it was a fanciful new setting, we don't actually know how the crystals work. Not enough.
We do get a small glimpse in the preparation for the fair, actually how they get their food and stuff like that. But do they live on that all the time and stuff? Because, I mean, they live in the Arctic. How much can it grow in that small bubble of green in the Arctic?
Yeah, they do show their food, so they do show they have some sheep for some reason. And they have jousting in their horns and whatnot, and they had those corn cob things.
Yeah.
So we do sort of have some bits and pieces filled in. The difficulty is that you can't just sort of show just their food source, because their cities and what they are made of is so very different.
Yeah. I do think though that it's important to not give too much, because otherwise then it becomes hard to make theories and things like that. I do think though that you are pretty right that they gave us probably the smallest amount they could for a world-building episode.
I'm not even sure, because what we get are really very minor aspects, like the food, and we don't really learn anything about their culture as a culture. We learn what they like to eat, and we learn the fact that there is a crystal fairy, and that's pretty much it. And as hard as this is to say, but I guess Games Ponies Play has more world building for the Crystal Empire than the Crystal Empire episodes itself. So
it still didn't even. The thing was that I was like, okay, we're returning to the Crystal Empire. They may have not done it the first time, but this next time, let's actually put some characters in there and make this place actually interesting. But then we again return to Cadence and Shining Armor, and they're still as cardboard cutouty as ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the show is always, even though the show hasn't thought too much into depth about how it works its things, like the elements of harmony being the biggest example of just some kind of vague plot device that you acquire, you press a button, and you win. And the point of when they first used whenever they used the elements of harmony in the two preludes was they go through a journey to acquire it, and then they press the button and they win.
Yeah.
How the elements actually work and how the characters actually represent it and how that magic works is really loose and ill-defined. And it's, while lots of people come up with many theories trying to explain it, frankly, the show hasn't put much thought into it.
Yeah.
But they are pretty much supposed to be Deus Ex Machina, so...
Yeah, I was just trying to think, though, like, the things that are important, though, is often stuff like how the Diamond Dogs act, or what's Discord's personality, or when they go to Cloudsdale, what's the point of this place? That they don't always spend a huge amount of time thinking behind it, but they still have a kind of consistent world behind what they're trying to show to their audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
yeah.
Go ahead, Emil.
All I was going to say is that when they don't give us things in the world, I think that to a certain extent that is pretty good, because people who are really invested, that gives them the room to build on it.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that for the entire show, I think they have the very basics down from the beginning, and then they've developed it from the side, because many different writers, many different ideas. I don't think they had the Crystal Empire in the design plans from the beginning, but since it didn't contradict their plans directly, I think they went ahead and okay, we'll put it in. Hasbro want us to make a reason to make new shiny new toys, literally. So yeah, we can put it in because it doesn't contradict our idea. I mean, it's not like they are going to put in a flying city in space yet.
Yeah.
So I think that unless it really is out of place, I don't think they have everything mired down in from the beginning. I think when Faust created the show, I don't think she had the Pegasi controlling the weather from the start. She might have had, I don't know how much it worked, but I'm kind of doubt it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've gone along as they came up with cool and neat concepts. They've just been freely creating whatever they thought would be interesting. I think what they have created, though, was at least in the first 2 seasons, of course, mostly it could be internally consistent.
Yeah.
It could be expanded upon what they've given us in the show.
Yeah. Based on what they gave us in season 3, internal consistency, that's something that you kind of have to work around with and try to make it internally consistent yourself.
Well, I think sort of like if you the best example of world building, I think, of the previous seasons, as is many aspects of the show, would be Sonic Rainbow.
Yeah.
Whereupon it's just Rainbow Dash going to a competition and just going through some anxiety problems. But whilst we go through this journey of her interacting with others and training and sitting in the waiting room, they also introduced to us the world of Cloudsdale, which was was that ever alluded to before? It was kind of it was introduced that episode, I thought.
Yeah, I think it was.
I think they just created Cloudsdale just as a setting to run a competition. I mean, if you were lazy, you could always just sort of had the competition run at Ponyville or something. But instead, they created this whole Greek-themed cloud city, which then they added the aspect that they control the weather, and they show us how they control the weather.
Yeah, it even goes so far that we get this very, very short scene in one of the working stations where they actually create all the snowflakes manually or hoofily. I don't know, manually, hoofily. And this is pretty much the spawning point for Snowdrop. So, because the idea of snowflakes being manually manufactured by the Pegasi is pretty much, the thing
if it's personally, I doubt that Faust didn't have Cloudsville in mind from the beginning, because she had the 3 main types of pony and alicorn, and she probably had the origin, home places of them from the start. So I think Cloudsdale was a concept from the beginning. That it's they had the rainbow factor. That probably not, but I think the Greek theme and that they lived in the clouds, I think that was pretty set from the beginning, because otherwise they had very little in mind from the start, and I think they had at least a framework to work with.
So, from what I heard, they just sort of came up with it at one spot and didn't even think about the Greek reference, and then found out about it later when they were starting to build upon the world. If they were going to do if they had that, they had Canterlot certainly in mind from the very beginning. That's just much was certain. As for Cloudsdale, you would sort of expect maybe if they wanted to foreshadow it, like what they did at the beginning of season 3 by waving the book in front of us. They would have Cloudsdale in the background, or one of the Pegasi, you'd involve Rainbow Dash coming from Cloudsdale or something.
Yeah.
But
Instead, Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, sure, Cloudstay has been in mind all the time, but the great thing they did in Sonic Rainboom was to not just take it as a setting, just putting some cloud houses there and that's it, but really making it a lively setting with a lot of detail and the small ideas that just happen in the background, but still, yeah, are full of ideas and fantasy, and not just there as background.
And then they expanded on that later on in Season 2.
Mm.
With episodes like Hurricane Fluttershy.
I was just that I'm not sure about the extreme attention to minor details. Like, I'm not sure that the writers put that much detail into it. As far as like Cloudsdale goes, for example, yeah, it has the Greek aesthetics, but then when they actually go to the weather making thing, pretty much even the jock, the three bully characters, the three jocks, are all wearing laboratory coats. It's a very much modern laboratory setting. And I'm not sure that I couldn't say that the writers put that detail in. I think it was more just they put across the idea that this setting was where they made the rainbows, and it was probably it's some finely crafted process rather than some kind of alchemic one.
Yeah.
That was one point actually. Someone I'm just remembering back to Double Rainboom, actually, interestingly enough, was someone actually mentioned to me that they never actually used potions much in the show. And
there was one instance, though.
There is one instance. Oh, I think there's like invisible ink. Twilight.
What was it was Pinky and Rainbow Dash messing up Twilight's chemistry that she was working on in Season 1.
That's like the only instance. And interestingly, for Cloudsail, they went for the more laboratory approach for them making the weather.
Yeah.
And I think that laboratory approach has at least been kept consistently in even such tropes like the Wonderbolt Academy, where they used machines to generate the huge cloud blob stuff. But then again, Wonderbolt Academy put a tarmac runway in there for some reason.
Yeah.
Because Pegasi could land on the spot. They use chariots or zeppelins or balloons that can land on the spot. You don't need a runway.
Yeah, but I guess we all kind of, saw the point that it is meant to be a Top Gun reference. If it is done well or not,
well, the thing was, though, that that is the difference, at least in terms of the level of world building between earlier seasons and Season 3. That before even though we don't know exactly why they're wearing lab coats, we get the feeling it's a laboratory and, there's all these liquids gushing through, or when they're doing the snowflakes, they're doing some very precise little details because they've got like big, huge magnifying glasses. There's been some genuine thought being put into what the characters are doing and why, even if it isn't the point of the story. The runway, however, yeah, exactly. They didn't put any thought into it because all they said was, let's take the Top Gun reference and just copy-paste the runway into it without thought.
Yeah.
By the
Season 3, the world building was a lot of, this is going on, and you're really asking yourself, why is this going on, and how does this fit into the world? That was the Season 3 world building question.
By the way, you were going on about potions earlier, Byter, and the professor, mentioned the love potion in Love Noof Day.
Yep. Okay.
Was this the one you were going for? Or? Also,
2 potions.
Also, there is, I believe, the potion Sakura brews that Apple Bloom misuses for the cutie pox.
And they brew a bath, with the whole... Sakura brews lots of potions.
Yeah, they say that literally, that she has a huge amount of potions, so... But thing is, Sakura is also going to be, a game changer because she's one of a kind. Because she's the only zebra ever shown in the show. So, I mean, for example, she looks like a pony with a specific quality, but she can do magic, so... it's really hard to really put her in place, what abilities she have and how common they are for the others, because we really have nothing to compare with.
Yeah, I was just going to actually say something I just thought about. Whilst, yes, Wonderbolt Academy just took a Top Gun and copy-pasted, another episode that seemed to be very influenced by other media was the one with the buffalo.
Yeah.
You know, it is very obviously Native Americans and Northern Americans taking, the Wild West setting.
Yeah.
And whilst they do keep the Wild West hats, I'm not so I don't find that that's not hugely out of character, because you're in the deserts and you want to protect against the sun. I can't think of many things that were too out of character. Maybe the buffalo making the tents was a little bit silly, but then again, all the stuff that everyone creates with hooves is kind of silly.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, at least in that episode, everything was like consistent. Like what happened is that the buffalo eventually fight against the cowboys, and how do they systemize the fight? They systemize it with pies. Whilst not world building, it was at least a different twist that is sort of in kilter with the show. Whereas if you were just copy pasting, they would have had them just firing guns.
But the pie was so stupid.
It was pretty stupid, though,
Yeah.
I will admit. And it's...
I love stupid, but
it's
this episode.
It was stupid in a good way, because it also worked to say the story into, wow, apples taste great for the buffaloes.
Yeah.
So it was a stupid thing, but it was a stupid good thing, like, I don't know, Hodor in Game of Thrones. It's so stupid it works.
It helped come to the end of the story, but it as a fight, I think it was pretty stupid.
Yes, I know they cannot go with guns, because this is something. This is good that they did not build something like guns into the world, to stay in the vocabulary of world building. But the idea of the pie...
They could just have like a bunch of ditches. I mean,
This is for me the low point of this episode, and not Pinky's dance, and this is saying something.
yeah.
Well, they do have weapons in the show. Crystal Ponies, one of the Crystal Ponies have a bow as a cutie mark. There's, during the Halloween episode, one of the fillies is dressed like a knight, and it has a flail or a mace on its tail. So I prefer that.
There's also spears in the Canterlot.
The spears.
I was
also,
coming to that too. But they do have
jousting.
weapons in it. But I would say it would be pretty horrifying for like a 5-year-old watching that, and suddenly half of the buffaloes dies from an onslaught of arrows, and then run into spears and get sheared. And I understand the part.
Yeah. Blood. I think that would a little off from the demographic they're trying to hit.
Well, it was. They also had the age rating thing and a tone to be tried to set in the show. I think, though, to go back to actual, to relate this to world building, whilst, yes, it was silly to use pies, I still like the idea of taking the Western setting and turning the Native Americans into buffalo, putting a MLP twist onto it, and to make the fight, not as lethal as the actual references they are taking it from.
Yeah.
The fun they had wasn't with just showing us iconography from the Wild West movies, but like saying, what was that joke? There's a horse drawing a horse-drawn carriage, or something like that. If you guys remember.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Mild West dances.
Yeah. There was a sort of a sense of creativity behind it, even if it did sometimes come across as a little bit silly.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the thing I was interested about. Like, I remember Voice of Reason was talking about his wish list for season 4. Yeah. And my wish list always has been for the show that I've always been interested about the show is the creativity and world building that they have done in the past. And that wasn't on his list. It was always the characters coming back. But there's something to be said for introducing new mythical creatures or different characters or different settings with an MLP twist to it.
Yeah.
And Season 3 didn't do enough of that twist. Like the float scene is very much that all they do is very much human floats, you know, just copying food and
Yeah.
they run along. It would have might have been interesting if they were, instead of just for some reason being automated because actual, our machines are automated by petrol engines, you have ponies drawing the carriages or something like that and have an interesting twist there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
There's definitely things that they could have put that pony twist on that they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emil said something? Oh, okay. I think if I was going to try and narrow it down, for me, the great love of world building is immersion. And there's two things I like playing off world building. One is creativity.
Yeah.
The sense that one of the aspects of the show is they are quadrupeds, they are equines, and whilst their universe is similar to ours, it's very different. And it's very interesting to see the fantasy twists they do to it. The other thing is immersion. And I do like the concept of having a world that takes itself seriously.
Yeah.
Which Season 3, of course, did not.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, though, I do want to add is one thing I really like about the world building in MLP is they leave a lot of things open for the fans to explore. It's not just every single thing in the world has been explained to us. No, they leave things open, and sometimes they leave too many things open, but I do appreciate that they're not closing out everything to the fans, shutting out everything.
Yeah, most of the time.
I believe we came across this kind of aspect in an earlier podcast, didn't we, Byter? I believe about what made MLP so good, that they give a certain concept but don't go through it until the very end, that they leave some stuff open. And this is actually something. Oh god! Now I'm I'm going to reference somebody who uses this reference all the time. I'm not sure how many of you and the viewers are familiar with Jesse Cox. He is just a Let's Player, nothing related to the fandom. But yeah, he was at some convention, interview, panel, whatever. I believe it was a panel, yeah. A panel for video games, and there was a creator of a video games explaining that the certain aspect to create a world that is engaging and getting the viewer's attention is they gave the example. I believe it was a panel of the creators of Dead Space, and in Dead Space, for those who do know the game, there is every now and then there are posters of Pang, and there's always just a slogan. There's always Pang. That's a slogan, and there are little Pang statues as well, but it is never explained or gone into what is up with this, and it's just a poster of a pretty girl and the slogan. There's always Pang, and there is no explanation, and this is on purpose because they put it in there. They put some element in there that is kind of out there, that is not really fitting into this whole dark, Dead Spacey world. And by putting it in there, it kept the people, it gave the world a more living and more real feeling, because you get the idea that there is a deeper depth behind all of it, but without actually creating anything. And that's also what the people on the panel said. This is, for example, when you create an opening for a campaign, some kind of tank war-y game, and you show a bunch of tanks driving into the scenario, and just one tank drives to the side and leaves the screen. And unconsciously, the player will always be like, oh, where did this one tank go? Will it come back? And it will never be come back. It is just put in there to create this very feeling of there is something bigger than what we see. And yeah, this is pretty much where I long-winded wanted to go. What MLP does as well. So sorry, so much.
Yeah, I think it's contingent. Yeah, I think it's I do understand your point that you can add in small little details that if the universe feels like those details matter, then they can feel like they can add to the sense of tangible bigness.
Yeah.
It's to use like an allegory, like for example, characters like Trixie Gilder or Discord or whatever, that people always are interested in those characters and why they act that way or how they will develop in their own stories.
Yeah, to a certain degree, not explaining things actually has a beneficial outcome.
Yeah, I think though, I was going to say, so, like, with the Trixie thing, it was like she did actually seem to have a consistent character behind her. And from the interview with the writer on the episode, when he talked about what Lauren Frost wanted, she had a very clear idea of how Trixie would act. Now, it was true that how an entertainer is viewed in that universe and why she was only used as a simple antagonist was a bit off in the episode. The thing was, though, that Trixie had a very much show persona with a more interesting... she inhabited the world where she felt realistic enough to probably have a deeper backstory than the show actually gave her.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say is, though, that... what was it? It's about the setting up. I remember another thing to reference would be Tasteful Understated Nerd Rage in his long rundown about how sci-fi and science fiction work in his rendition on the Mass Effect 3 ending, in which he talked about how science fiction is stuff like Star Wars, where warp drives and blasters, they work in a certain way, and you just point them and you go really fast, or it fires a laser beam thingy. Yeah. While Star Trek, it's very much more grounded in its own internal universe. MLP is very much more on the fantasy side of things.
Yeah.
That how do the Pegasi control weather? Well, we don't know exactly how they control it, but they have some sciencey lab things. Yeah. The thing is, though, that the contrast I make is like MLP is fantasy, but also is, earlier on I said about Looney Tunes, or something that people don't generally think too much about the world it inhabits because the world is inconsistent. But the thing is, MLP, I felt, was, at least in previous seasons, was that they took their characters seriously and their stories seriously. That the world felt consistent and the characters felt real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why I think it's not just that Trixie wasn't explained why she acted that way beyond she was a show pony. It was that the main six, while interacting with one another, at least felt realistic enough to not be... They didn't feel like a comic farce.
Mm-hmm.
And we feel by impotentia that Trixie herself shouldn't be a comic farce. That she must probably be as much a real character as the rest of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Which comes into a problem when you talk about episodes like Too Many Pinkie Pies.
Yeah.
Where the character is degraded to an absolute farce for the purposes of comedy before even the clones appear. So when the clones do appear, the contrast between the opening of the episode and the end of it, it doesn't... For me, okay, yeah, I don't like the episode, but we're talking about world building here in the sense like the cool aspect of that was the mirror thingy.
Yeah,
and potentially using that. But beyond that, what the characters did never really interested us that as much as previous seasons because it was all so silly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree with that. Yeah. Emil, did you have something to say earlier, or?
No, I do have one opinion about that Pinkie Pie thing. That I don't think the Pinkie Pie is as degraded in the beginning of the episode as she is, as the clones are, and the clones is an aspect of her. But that's an entirely different conversation here. But yeah.
The point, though, is that she doesn't seem to... if you wanted to make a contrast between herself and the clones, then you shouldn't make the opening about her obsessing about fun, when all the clones do is similarly obsess about fun. Whilst there might be a difference between them, that difference is more subtle.
I don't consider that subtle, but yeah, it's eye of the beholder thing. I consider the difference to be very, very glaring. But yeah, it's...
Well,
wait, hold on. She creates the clones because she wants to, you know, she wants to have more fun. So yeah, they only get that aspect of a character. And her job is to have fun and make other people have fun. She wants to enhance other people's fun by being there because she is a fun pony, trademark. And so that's why she clones herself, and that's why the clones only get the fun thingy. For example, if...
Well, you haven't explained how they are. You just said why she did it rather than why they are different. Look, I'll reduce this down to a simple thing. At the beginning, Pinkie Pie bumps into Twilight, says, "Oh, what are you doing? Magic? Oh, that's fun." And then, "Oh, Rarity, you have a dress. That's fun." Then Rainbow Dash, "Oh, you're doing cloud stuff. Fun." And here's about the barn raising and the Rainbow Dash doing thing, and she's interested in the fun. And then afterwards, what do the clones all do? They all run around looking for fun things. For me, that isn't much of a difference.
Yeah, the big difference there is the clones, they want to have fun. Pinkie Pie wants to spread fun, because the clones obviously don't care if they ruin everything else stuff in order to have fun. They only want to have fun for themselves, while Pinkie Pie wants to have fun for others. For example, when she goes to the pool, she makes an effort not to ruin Rainbow Dash resting, because she wants to, you know, she doesn't want to have fun on Rainbow Dash Expanded, she wants to have fun for and with Rainbow Dash.
Then why did she jump in the pool? Because Rainbow Dash is not going to have fun with that.
Because she still wanted to keep her company, and you know, she still wants to have fun. I don't deny that, but she partly does it to enhance other people's fun. And by jumping into the pool and not ruining it for Rainbow Dash, she's not
at the very beginning, when she goes really fast around Rainbow Dash and causes her to lose the cloud. Why was she doing that for Rainbow Dash's? Why did she think...
that was her way of helping it, you know. Yeah. The reason she trampled the cloud Rainbow Dash was to, you know, soften it up so it could fly up. So Pinkie Pie went in her own way to send it back up to the sky, so Rainbow Dash didn't have to worry about work anymore.
I don't think that is obvious in the show. For the most part, it seemed to be, "Oh, you're doing something, Rainbow Dash. Whee! Bye."
Well, actually, I got the same impression Emil got when I first saw it. Like, Rainbow was working on this cloud, and Pinkie helped her in a very extreme and nauseating way, but helped nevertheless. And the cloud was, working again.
I don't even
I agree with you guys as well.
I don't think... for me, the rules of what that cloud was doing and why it was there and what was going on wasn't particularly clear to me. Rainbow Dash said, what was it? That the cloud wasn't behaving or something?
It was too dense, I think she said.
Yeah, it had become fog, more like fog.
He wanted to be fog. And Pinkie Pie, I mean, if all you needed to do... I mean, what did... All you needed to do was whiz around it a bit? Was that it?
Well, the thing is, we don't know if it's a permanent solution. She could think that she's helping, but since she's not doing it the proper way, it can probably fall down, which is, with Rainbow Dash's reaction, it's not impossible. I think that she wanted to help. She did in the way she wanted to, because, you know, she's not a Pegasi, but it wasn't the best way. She just wanted to help. She wanted to help Rainbow Dash, get free time to have more fun. She wanted to, light the day up for Rainbow Dash.
What did she say to Rainbow Dash before she made the cloud go up and then immediately disappear?
I don't
Something
exactly
like, "Let me
remember.
help
It's been a while.
But you do remember in exquisite detail all the details about why she was doing that and
Yeah,
stuff.
if you want to know why, that's because my son often watches that. That's one of his episodes because, well, it's very fitting for a 3-year-old kid. He will loves watch it, but the volume is so low, low, so I don't really hear everything because I do stuff on my computer while he's sitting next to me at his computer. So I don't know every dialogue in,
But
Well,
I believe
it's
it
that
was. I
if you
believe it
remember-
was something like "Let me help you."
Yeah.
If you're sure. I could, of course, go to the episode transcripts and find out sometime. I don't think it was... If it was, it was very... I think it was a very short line of dialogue, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It was short. It was a short
Yeah.
line of dialogue.
And I think there was... the difficulty I still have with trying to describe all of this pinky social conscience thing is how quickly she states something and then causes inconvenience towards others, like just before she bumped into both Twilight and Rarity.
Yes, according to Scan in the chat, it's she says, "What are you doing?" And that's all. But I don't think
Is
that...
that all she said? Oh,
Yeah.
come on.
The thing is, I don't think our reading of her, social and behavior is not that far off because it's kind of, repeated throughout the show. I mean, that's her.
No, you're just
gift
adding in.
is the gift of laughter. She wants to spread laughter. The entire episode, what's it called? A Friend in Need. A Friend in Need. It's about, she wants to make people happy. That's the entire song about.
Yes, which is why I'm saying that this is distant compared to that. Because all she says is, "What you doing?" Spinny, 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 and boom, she's gone.
Yes,
If she did
wanted to
that
help.
without Rainbow Dash responding, that would be weird.
Rainbow Dash did respond, and I think she did say something to the response
Well,
and then did the
thanks.
spinniness.
She was
Mhm.
like.
I don't think
I believe
Rainbow
it
Dash
was
didn't
a-
say thanks.
I believe
Why
it
would
was
Rainbow
a
Dash...
confused version of thanks because Pinky helped her with the cloud.
Rainbow Dash didn't... Go and watch the scene again. I don't think Rainbow Dash, from my memory, didn't have a chance to do anything past the gag. The whole point of that scene was the gag.
Can we move on to world building? This.
Well, if you guys won't let me have a scene where Pinkie Pie says, "What you doing?" Rainbow Dash says, "This cloud's being fog," and she says, "Oh," and then spinny, 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 and runs off.
Oh, yep.
And you go,
One thing-
"Oh, this is an example of her deep characterness." No,
No,
I got
we
the
never
transcript.
said this, Byter. Sorry, we never said this.
Yep. Thing is, I can quote the transcript if you want. The transcript is, "Hey Rainbow Dash, what you doing? This punk cloud got so heavy it's making fog. Figure out thin this bad boy out so it floats back up, runs around the cloud. Ooh, fun! We gotta go. Thanks, Pinky." So
you see,
thanks.
I wasn't what I originally said, that she was super obsessed on fun.
Yeah. I
Doesn't
mean,
that
she wanted to. Yeah, I don't deny that Pinkie Pie wants to, have fun. I mean, yeah, but it's kind of, it's very well established that she also wants to spread fun, and I think this episode is good at showing that. She wants to
I think
keep her fun level high while also keeping everyone else happy. They don't contradict themselves.
If that is the case, however, then that scene showed none of it, or very little.
Yes, it's
I-
not
You
the
had
best
to add
I disagree.
that meaning.
But
Well, she said, "Woo, fun," and that was her last line.
yeah, it's not the best scene
Yeah.
out there, but I don't know. I don't think this scene is worth hanging up on it so much.
Well, if you won't let me say that when someone just says, "What you doing? Ooh, fun," is a simplistic scene that doesn't show a character's depth.
No, it doesn't make a depth because it's together with many other episodes showing that, and many other clips in that episode showing that she has a problem helping everyone else being fun. Because
Except,
thing
that
is,
doesn't make sense.
if she only wanted to have fun by herself, she would find the single most thing that she would found to be fun and do it. But no, she does enjoy having fun and making others happy, even if it doesn't her, and it's a clone instead. She wants a clone to tell her, how did you make my friend happy? How did that make you happy? So I can be happy that I helped someone else be happy.
And you state that every single scene in that one is relying on prior characterization, you're saying? The difficulty I had, though, was that my interpretation of prior characterization was that the Pinkie Pie we've seen in the past wasn't so egregiously retarded to be ridiculously obsessed of fun at that level.
She's shown to be obsessed with stuff. And, I mean, she's been obsessed in making friends. I mean, she pretty much almost gave Cranky Doodle a heart attack and lots of other stuff because she was so obsessed with making a friend of him, making him happy, and herself, as well.
And I
guess they don't contradict.
I guess we can kind of agree on that Pinkie has a pretty unique way in thinking and seeing the world. Like, she has apparently this great knowledge and brain. She is not a retard, because we can see how she is manageable to remember each and every single pony. She is capable of organizing parties and stuff, but she has this weirdness to her. She is eccentric. She has a very strange thinking pattern, and
I don't think that within that thinking pattern, being obsessed so much on fun and causing so much distress to others was in character.
Well, that's your way of thinking, and that's totally fair.
Because never before has she caused others actual harm or displeasure.
Yes.
Purpose.
Cranky donkey.
Exactly, him. Very much directly, instantly after the Smile Song, she annoys the hell out of one poor soul. She annoys him throughout the whole episode.
Only memorable.
And if this female donkey wouldn't have coincidentally lived in Ponyville, there wouldn't have been a happy ending for Pinkie. Pinkie would just annoyed him, pissed him off, hurt him, and destroyed his property without any good solution. She was just lucky that this female donkey was living in this town.
That's hyperbole. Actually, no, that's hyperbole to start with, because we have seen times when Pinkie Pie, while she is cognizant of some things, like in Party of One, she eventually does come to sudden realizations. No, I was actually going to say two things. One, it is shown obviously that Cranky Donkey Doodle is an exception. In the sense, when she does the check and not check, Cranky Donkey Doodle is shown as being outside her normal parameters. And two, what is the thing she does for the whole rest of the episode that causes him the said distress? She tries to apologize because she feels sorry. She may not apologize in the best manner, but I would argue someone who's trying to apologize is trying to make up for.
Yeah, but she is still causing her suffering. This is one thing you just deny her having done in the past. She is sometimes very insensible, and that's okay. This is not.
But she was. But she still recognized that something was off and tried to apologize.
And she did too many Pinkie Pies as well.
And she was told, though, that that maybe she should just apologize and that's it. Twilight told her that, didn't she? I mean, that wasn't something that Pinkie Pie just decided to do.
Actually, Twilight told her to lay off him, leave him alone. No, you can't be friends with everyone. It was actually Pinkie Pie who pushed to apologize.
But my point is that Twilight had to say that in order for Pinkie Pie to eventually come around and try to apologize.
No, what did she... I mean, she does the check scene and then continues to try to interact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And try to please him. And then, what was it? This donkey's really bored, and she then eventually leaves or something. Then she has the Twilight scene, then she brings the toupee and tries to apologize but causes more upsetness. Mm-hmm. And we have the crazy chase scene, and then she backs up again, and we have the final resolution.
Well, my point is that she didn't go to apologize until after Twilight, so it's kind of hard to say that she would have done that anyways.
I can't remember her dialogue. Though, yes, it was after Twilight said to apologize. Still, she did have to spend the time and talk with someone else about the problem. And she was at least cognizant of there being a problem. In Too Many Pinkie Pies, she needs to be forcibly thrown off Twilight because she's hugging too hard.
Well, that she has a problem with boundaries. That's not really a new thing. But anyway, should we move back to the topic?
Since when before has she had problems with boundaries?
Very first episode.
Yes, every time.
Which was Twilight with the partiness.
Yeah.
For example, and the entire part, and not knowing when she's supposed to stop and stuff like that. I mean, it's part of it. She has problem with boundaries. Usually works out in the end, but we also have the Grand Galloping Gala episode. She has problem realizing when she does sing things. Oh, it was that kind of party. It's a different, even more radical kind of party. This is not something new to her character. It's very well established.
And she's picking up one of the guests after the other, trying to force them to dance and enjoy the party. So, it is not as much. So, can we please move on? I guess you will not change your mind today, and we apparently not as well.
Since when were you going to say that I wasn't going to change my mind?
I'm not sure. You don't seem to.
Why ever have you claimed that I won't change my... What evidence do you have to claim that I will not change my mind?
I have never witnessed it so far, so...
Yeah, I agree with that.
No, I have told you the example. What was the examples I gave
Yes,
you
the example was not that you actually changed your mind in the regards of suddenly liking something. No, you found a different angle to dislike something. So this is not really changing your mind.
Finding new angles to dislike something.
I believe it was about Wonderworld Academy, but that's another kind
world building.
Thanks, Emil.
Yes, thank you. Someone.
What
world building?
Before you started being so sanctimonious and dancing over me, saying, "Oh, Byter will not accept other people's opinions." First, listen to what I have to say. I agree. Now shut the fuck up about me not listening. I agree that, yes, she did have that aspect to her in the past, and you have a fair point. I think, however, I will say that it was, at least in Season 3 and in Too Many Pinkie Pies in particular, exaggerated, more so than in the past.
And I agree with you on this one.
So, I have again demonstrated to you, ANY, that I am able to change my opinions, and you should not act in such a parsimonious way. Wrong word.
I think you're taking it the wrong way. I mean, you kind of yourself like to build a reputation that you love to argue, that you're very headstrong. That's, you shouldn't take, I saw that as a, as a joke,
Okay, then don't claim that I won't change my opinion. Just say that we should move on. You're trying to claim victory when you're moving on. Don't do so, particularly when you are wrong.
I never claimed victory, but sure, fine. I concede maybe I did whatever.
I was talking in regards to ANY third person. Like.
It wasn't actually supposed to be.
Now
I thought it was obvious since ANY was the one who was trying to move on and to claim victory.
Do we have anything to say about world building?
I said that the exaggeration of character traits does not make for realistic characters.
Okay.
And that means that characterization of said characters in episodes feels less deep and less... it makes the world... because MLP is a fantasy setting that is not spend so much time explaining its mechanics, but rather its characters. It needs to make sure that its characters are realistically grounded rather than exaggerated.
Yeah.
And Pinkie Pie, while she has been written in many different angles by many different writers, has not been written to the extreme she was in Too Many Pinkie Pies.
One thing I kind of want to switch the topic over to world building again.
Well, that
one
was
thing
what I said in world building. I gave you the logical, the steps. That MLP, I'll repeat it again, MLP is a fantasy setting where the details don't always matter. However, it has always been grounded in the realistic feel of its characters. Part of the realistic feel is to not make them ridiculously exaggerated.
Okay.
That's
All right.
part of the world building.
What I was going to say is that one thing that they do in the world building is they mention things that exist that we've never seen. For example, tank is a great example. You know, we don't know much about, you know, do they have tanks in Equestria, but that something is named, like they reference something in the world.
I don't remember when they said tanks. I do remember when they keep mentioning Starswell the Bearded, because that's the one character in the past they can keep looking
May the
back
best pet win. Rainbow, how can you name a pet tank without there being some sort of object out there?
Well, you know why
Called a
tanks
tank.
were originally named tanks, right?
Yeah, she says like a tank.
No, she means
The actual...
they were called barrels during World War One to, you know, throw up the German spies about what they were actually developing. So we're transporting barrels that then develop into tanks. That's what tanks came from. But I don't think they named the tortoise after a barrel, personally.
Yeah, they named it after a tank, and I think that mentioning that there are things like tanks and the epic pony war that Twilight mentioned in It's About Time. I mean, that stuff, that's world building. It's minor, but it's still world building, and it's interesting when you have a character like that explain something that we've never seen before, but apparently exists.
In this particular example, I dare to say that it was more an joke given by the producers for all the viewers who know what a tank is, but it was probably not to be taken serious as a reference to actual existence of tanks.
It might have not been.
I know this
meant
is a party pooper argument, but I guess in this case we have to go with this one.
I don't think anyone argues they actually have tanks in the show, but if I understand the correct past analysis, it's that sometimes producers do go out of boundaries to make a point, you know, to make a joke. It's you know, it's still a cartoon show. That's one of the advantages of a cartoon show.
I think just like with the Pinkie Pie stuff earlier, you are adding too much meaning to particular short segments.
When they mentioned
that, which is obvious, I'm not sure that they particularly exactly mean a tank. He's built like a tank.
But it definitely opens up the spectrum and potentially...
I mean, it's definitely not a tank because he's not a large armoured... He's not a large armoured combat engineering vehicle.
Yeah.
Yet.
I don't think he's probably going to become a large...
They put a propeller on him. He's flying now. Just watch him, you know, he's going to be a flying tank.
Doesn't this make... Doesn't
it's
this
a
make
large
him more
armoured
tracked?
tract.
Doesn't this make him more like a helicopter than a tank? The propeller?
Yeah, that's what I say. A tank is defined by its tracks.
Well, actually, Scan mentioned a good point in the comment in the chat that it could be a different type of tank. So you got me there, Scan.
Well, the thing is, consider it a water tank. To quote for posterity, Scan wrote a strong container, a water tank. But they did give a description about the tortoise. You know, he continues moving on and all that. I can dig up the quote if you want, but
yeah, I believe there was a quote.
The quote doesn't apply to a water tank person. I don't consider it doing so.
Yeah. I guess it is a reference to the actual vehicle, but I guess it's more a thrown-in idea and not an... I don't know. I don't really see tanks within MLB.
I don't think I'd store much... I wouldn't store so much behind him saying just that one line, oh, he's built like a tank.
Yeah. Okay. I can see where I kind of put too much meaning there.
Yeah,
But
it was a nice
my
idea,
point.
I only gave it like a bit. I don't know. One I like better was like at Star Swirl the Bearded.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
get some-
That's another example of world building just through words and not through actually seeing anything.
It is a little bit...
So far.
So far, yeah, so far. Hopefully we get something like that in season 4. Hopefully.
The only the thing is, yes, whilst it is interesting that they have created, they have a historical figure to refer back to who has been a proprietor of magic. I wish they did actually make some more mythological past figures beyond the 3 in the Heartswarming Eve, or maybe 6, I guess, if you're being pedantic. That it shouldn't just be defined by the great leaders and one magic user. That in the past of Equestria, there's great potential, like in the past of humanity, to build some, to mention some characters who designed, like, the railway. Who made that? Well, Pony Edison or whatever, blah, 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 you know.
Yeah. Well, Cypher actually mentioned a pretty good thing in the chat as well. In the Art of the Dress song, Rarity does say Rainbow wouldn't look like a tank. Just, I'm not saying that they exist, just saying that it's, it helps.
If they do exist, then the race most likely to have them would actually be the Pegasi. Okay, or to design them, because they have been shown to be, you know, the warrior tribe from the beginning. They have the military history.
Yeah.
So even though they would, probably not have much use for a tank, since they all got wings.
Yeah.
But since we kind of moved past the whole tank or panther thing,
Yeah.
I actually want to go with Byter's idea of Starsworld, because he is another example of just throwing something out there, like Pang in Dead Space, or the moving by side Panzer in the other example the panel guys brought up. That you have this Starsworld, you have him first in Lunar Eclipse just as a name and a visual, and the little fact that he created a lot of spells. Then he returns in It's About Time with the Starsworld the Bearded Wing in the library. And
Heartswarming Eve,
yes.
he was mentioned in that.
Yeah, exactly, as I believe the mentor of the Twilight character. And
yes.
we only got those 3 or 4 references to him, and look what people are doing with him. Like this crazy Swedish guy, I believe, who claimed that Starsworld would be Discord. Sorry, Emil.
Crazy like a fox.
Yeah, but I mean, look what the people are doing. Just because his name was there for 3 or 4 times, the people were creating, but without a lot of conclusion to it. It was just a name and a few references, and people start playing with this idea and creating something in their head, giving this world a feeling that it is bigger.
And I really do appreciate that. I mean, I would love for the show to expand more on Star Swirl and give us more, but I do think that it's great that they don't give that much, because then it allows other people to, like, you get tons of stories of, oh, who's Star Swirl, and this is a Brony's interpretation, and I love seeing that. So.
Yes, I do like often the stuff that they put in there. The thing I will say though, Starsworld, good. The different various races, the elements of harmony, and the great ancient villains. The show, however, hasn't done it always the best. For example, easiest example would be Celestia saying basically all the villains she defeated was 1,000 years ago. I'm not sure if that's just coincidence or just that they feel like that's about the right time to reference everything. And it's the same thing I said with the Starsworld, that they always keep bringing him up. That whilst they have built their own world, they're not building more of it, is sometimes a problem. That if you keep going back to what you have created, you're limiting yourself and making it. Sometimes it's just like it gets a little bit silly when everything is 1,000 years in the past, and when everything in the past is done by Starswell the Bearded, 1,000
Or
years
Celestia.
ago. Yeah. It's also actually goes more into contemporary examples, such as Season 3's multitudinous returns of characters. So Trixie returned. Much we all do love Trixie, and I do like the idea of her returning. But they didn't actually build her character more. Instead, she was basically out of it. She was supercharged for the most of it with the Alicorn amulet. And whilst it was a return of a character we liked, she wasn't expanded, and we didn't get a different character.
Yeah.
It was reusing old world buildingness, but there's something to be said that we keep being creative. That world building isn't just coming back to the old points and expanding them. It's building a bigger world.
What I just got recognized by, reminded by this whole aspect you talked about with everything being in the past. That a while ago I saw an interesting attempt by I guess a newer reviewer-ish, analyzer-ish female brony by the name of maybe Pony. Pun,
Yes,
pun,
I saw that.
Oh, I love bad puns in the name, just like A and Y. So yeah, maybe she's already, I already like her because bad pun in the name.
Yeah.
She tried to attempt to create a timeline for MLP dealing with this whole issue of everything being 1,000 years in the past.
She stole my idea because I was lazy.
Yeah,
I've been saying, first video I said I'm going to put up a timeline video, but yeah, I'm too lazy to do it, so now she stole my idea and it's all my own fault. I'm still going to do one.
I don't think you have the evidence to particularly prove that she stole it. Merely that she might have come up with it also.
Possibly.
Amy was joking.
Probably, yeah. Considering she, I have no idea that she has even viewed my video. But yeah, regarding that, regarding that timeline, making sense of 1,000 years back and all that going back, could also be because, there's two, in history, there's two main teachings. One is the more commonly accepted, that it's society that creates individuals, the society moves along a recognizable pattern. A drought often causes a war years later, and stuff like that, as much recognizable pattern. The other theory is the great person theory, or this time the great pony. That is individual people that pushes on evolution in society. For example, the theory is, for example, if you have shot Hitler, would World War II happen? That's an idea that subscribes to the great people theory. And my idea is that the world of Equestria builds on the great people theory.
I think, though, I would say actually, though, that what they have done, they haven't actually they don't spend much time dwelling on the past, because the past doesn't matter. Often they use a name to describe someone who's made a spell or done something to Discord or something else. And that was very much sort of what the timeline that may be made up was, the time when, probably when Discord was probably in power. And then there was the time, he must have been defeated, and the time after that must obviously be the time when Celestia and Luna are in power. That isn't necessarily true, however. Just because Discord is possibly around doesn't mean he's in power. It doesn't even mean he's around yet. He might, if you have your own personal Starswell theory, from wherever someone turned into Discord or wherever Discord came out from the rock or whatever, it doesn't mean he immediately starts ruling the world. And the same with the sisters. It may have taken them a while to consolidate rule over Equestria. Their rule over Equestria might actually be fairly recent. Those details aren't explained to us, and it is we are jumping too much to conclusions by ascribing the names that they give to what happened into the past to being what is the past. what I said about maybe's timeline was basically, it feels like a Bronze Age, Iron Age, Blood Age, kind of thing, but just by who ruled it. The difficulty is we don't know exactly how they consolidated power. Did the sisters try and work together? Did they not? Or did they go out and try and assume power independently and then assimilate the power together?
Might I just interject? Yeah, exactly. The origin of how they came to power, but you mentioned before we didn't know how long they were in power, but it can be pretty, reasonably assumed that they were in power they've been in power, well, Celestia, for at least 1,000 years, because they ruled Equestria together, ruling over the star, the sun and the moon, before, they fight and she was exiled to the moon, yada, all that crap. And since it's been 1,000 years within quotation marks, I've never taken that as literal. It's, a long time ago, it's equivalent to 1,000 years. So they probably ruled for 1,000 years. But as you mentioned, they probably weren't in absolute power from the beginning. Or if they were, they might have been, it comes back to the God figure, because as one thing that people always hang up on, and I do as well, is in the Hearthwarming Eve episode, why are they on the flag when they didn't found or rule Equestria by then? That's something that's always going to come back until they explain it.
Yeah.
I don't buy that. Well, it was also a prop they had. They were in Canterlot. Twilight could have asked Celestia, hey, how did the flag look like when Equestria was founded? And they could have made a new one. They can make flags very quickly, like in a day, for a certain crystal fair. And yeah, you get my point.
Yeah.
So
I was just going to say that what we know is from the beginning of the Wraith, the first episode, they say the sisters ruled together. But when Celestia defeated Luna, it doesn't necessarily mean Celestia stayed in power, though it in canon is probably most likely.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing her not staying in power. She was the princess. Yeah, I think that can be assumed.
There could be, for example, though, instead of just saying, oh, the easy way to explain things is just say Celestia's in power for 1,000 years. You could say something like, after the great turmoil with Luna, there was turmoil within the kingdom. Or that, that there was a chance in those 1,000 years for rebellion, incitement, or division amongst the lands of Equestria.
Yeah, it's a theory.
Yeah, I'm talking about potential avenues for storytelling, in the sense, like Celestia could have turned potential revolutionaries to stone, and they come back and they reveal some, since Celestia is now canon, of course, they can reveal some of her trolling in the past.
Yeah, or what was I going to say? That what was I going to say? If there was a time of troubles after Celestia, the banished Luna, then what would you call that before, when Discord, King Sombra, the Sisters War, the entire foundation of Equestria? If that isn't a time of trouble and things went bad afterwards, holy crap, how are any opponents still alive? Is the question.
I was just going back. This sort of relates to what you're talking about in terms of great people or great calamities or whatnot causing huge effects. I'm not sure really it's like it's going to be... It feels very cookie cutter what you're doing, or you're noticing a pattern, when really it's what society is, and it's it's just the nature of what context is. Like, one thing that might be out of that normal context would be something like the assassination of JFK. In the sense, it was some, guy with a rifle who got a lucky shot, and that lucky shot caused the death of a person that changed the outlook of an entire nation.
Well, to be fair, yeah, it did change the outlook, but there's also a pattern of political assassinations in a country with a large amount of weaponry and a divisive political situation. He's one of the few presidents, okay, well, actually it's quite many when you look at it over the short history the US actually have, but he's one of the few presidents who have actually been murdered, but many have been shot at. I mean, at least a majority. I mean, Reagan was shot at, Clinton was shot at. There were people trying to, you know, use hand grenades against Obama. I mean, it's a continued. Oh yeah, it was a hand grenade against Bush the younger too, and that's just recent history. People have been presidents have been shot at or actually killed several times in U.S. history. So there's a pattern produced by society, and the society was produced about the situation they came from, and society, I mean, yeah, you can't calculate everything. There's always a part of entropy, part of society. I mean, humans are never 100% reliable.
This kind of sounds like that there are a lot of weapons in America.
What?
This kind of sounds like that there are a lot of weapons lying around in America.
Yeah, I know. Who would know?
Well,
yeah.
it's also he is a person who holds a lot of power. And makes
yeah, but I mean, there's also in many other countries. Yeah, for example, if you take Sweden, which has existed for quite a bit longer, we've had murders of kings and you know, coups and all that, but we have had a smaller amount in quite a bit longer time. I mean, actually murdered by not by, you know, civil war, but murdered kings in Sweden. Within the prime minister for the 20th century too, we have one prime minister, 1986, Olof Palme, one king in 70, oh dear, I'm going to get mocked by this. Gustav III, he was shot in a theater, and at the ball, I mean, and I think that's the only one that actually got killed by assassins.
Yeah,
but thing is, if we'd go with the common, common theory that Oswald acted alone, he wasn't part of a big government conspiracy, then there's really no U.S. president that has been assassinated by lone gunman. The conspiracies that the own government have executed the U.S. conspiracies, as far as I know, that's never been proven.
I wasn't talking about the conspiracy. All I was saying is just that, in some regards, probably the assassination of JFK caused a change in the future of the US, both in terms of who was ruling it and public perception.
Yes, but my point is that there's a theme of that happening in the US. I mean, I
think it's just a grander... like you said earlier, it's just pattern spotting. But generally speaking, all we can say is use the Socratic method. I.e., we say, what if X happens? How will the people react? How will the leaders react? How will the whole complex integrated system of society respond to an input stimulus? So, yeah, if you kill the president, will people be sympathetic? Will they be pleased at the death of their dictator? Will they fear terror? There will be a big move of public opinion. If there is a big, huge ecological disaster, famine or whatnot, how does the government, how do the people respond? Are they able to cater for everyone? Is the food balance that they have available evenly spread to everyone?
And that can be calculated, considered on earlier history, and what pattern does exist.
Well,
patterns change.
If I may cut in there, because we are getting away from the main topic and into the meta area, which is completely fine, especially when you have a look on the watch, watch the time, and yeah, I guess this is a good point to maybe give a few final statements what we learned today about world building, and then move on over to the aftermath, where you two, Emil and Byter, can continue this discussion about the real world aspects that are important for history.
Actually, I can't, because I pretty much have to run after this show is over. But
all right,
but maybe later tonight.
I'll just try and quickly wrap it up then. I think there is patterns, but I think instead of just saying there are patterns, we should say why there are patterns and figure it out from almost like a scientific standpoint, why stuff happens. All right.
Okay. Anybody else who wants to say some last?
Well, I just wanted to wrap that up, but okay. Going back to...
No, I just wanted to give the guests a chance to give a final statement.
Okay, I just wanted to wrap my thing up and then go back to the show, and then they could feed off it.
Okay, that's fine as well.
Yeah, go.
Okay. To wrap up my sentiments about the show, I think the show isn't a grand epic like Star Trek or Lord of the Rings, where the setting is established with great detail. It's more a fantasy universe where they vaguely hint at Starswell the Bearded. They show us science labby things in Cloudsdale, where they just make the weather. But the exact mechanics aren't explained to us. Though these things are interesting to us because the world is put across with a certain sense of realism or integrity to it that makes it feel like a consistent world that allows us to be immersed for those world building aspects to be important to its audience.
Yeah. I'd like to add and say that characters help motivate us. You know, the very, very well-developed characters motivate us to learn more about the universe of MLP, and the openness of the MLP universe greatly contributes to just people coming up with theories. It's whenever you leave something open to the fans to decide, it really helps motivate the fans and grow the fandom.
Yeah, I think that Faust and the other creators were really, really lucky. I did not think they planned on making such a good combination of good characters, enough, but not very developed, but still interesting background stuff to make such a creative spawn point for others. That was just a really huge lucky break that, if we go back to an earlier podcast of it, it helped make this fandom so strong. So it's a mix of good creativity and, well, quite a bit of luck.
Yeah. One thing that may have helped is the fact that, you know, it had the EIA rating. Because it was meant for a younger audience, expanding on these things wouldn't have been that capable, and thus allowed them to be more open.
Yeah.
In season 1.
So I guess this is actually an interesting thing, that the fact that the world building in MLP is so strong on a completely opposite level as the before mentioned example of Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings is explaining everything in such a great detail, which creates this world, and MLP does it the other way, because by not explaining everything, they also create the world, but it's not written down in its form, but it is, more in the heads of the people enjoying it. So interesting, to see how different worlds can be built in fiction. And I guess we will look a little bit deeper into, or go a little bit more off trail, whatever will happen, in the Crepuscularity Aftermath, talking a little bit more about world building and wherever the discussion leads us. And we are trying to continue the stream on the Twitch TV channel. In case this should not work, I will link everybody to the live stream channel. But first, stay here, stay tuned. We will continue shortly. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.